I'm Sumit Shrotriya. I'm the CEO for AngelBot AI. Uh, but before I begin my presentation, I just want to see a hands of how many people were attending the today morning session with Karthik. No? All right. So few of them. Okay, good. So I can share my story again, once again, right? So imagine this, right? You're in the Air Force, and you're an engineer of the Air Force, and a pilot who's just flown the aircraft comes after the sortie, and he says, this plane at 45-degree angle uh, with this much RPM had a snag, right? And that's about the only information the engineer is getting. All of you out here are engineers, right? Okay. So suppose someone says these many words to you about the applications that you are managing. How many of you do you think can debug this application of yours? Right? No? None? Now, imagine this. Okay, I'm sure you guys already understand, right? How many parts does an aircraft have? Does a fighter aircraft have? Any guesses? No? 300,000, right? So 3 lakh parts per aircraft. And how many aircrafts does the Indian Air Force have? How many categories of aircrafts does the Indian Air Force have? Any? No, categories.
Different categories.
Different. So MiG-21, Rafale, right? Any? So there are around 40 different, minimum 40 different categories of planes that the Air Force flies today, right? So you're multiplying the problem of diagnosing something by that many folds, right? And you're just an engineer you know, who's being asked to go through these millions of pages of documents to find a snag which happened at 45 degrees when the pilot was flying, right? Um, it's a difficult challenge, right? So engineers who have been with the forces for a very long time, it'll be easy for them to find. But do you think a young engineer who's just graduated from his academy, he's just joined, and he's given this problem statement, how accurately do you think he will be able to solve this problem? Chances of errors very high, right? So that's the problem that we've been trying to solve at TeamSync. That's one of the problems that we've been trying to solve at TeamSync. TeamSync, 90% of all the data that exists in today's enterprise is unstructured versus the 10% which is structured, right? 90% of the intelligence of any organization resides in unstructured format. I think that's why there's such a huge, this thing about the Gen AI explosion is because suddenly that 90% of the data, which didn't have the intelligence built in, right? I'm sure many of you have been building Power BI or analytic dashboards for ages now, right? So there's been intelligence in the data when it comes to structured data, but when it comes to the unstructured part of the data, that intelligence till the coming of the Gen AI models was quite less, right? Where was this data generally residing? So it's not that the systems didn't exist before this world, right? There were document management systems or enterprise document management systems, or there were a whole host of content management systems. Obviously, with a fine grain of differences between each of those systems, which existed, which managed this data and did a fairly good job at it. But were they able to manage your keywords? How would you search through all this data? So if any one of you have ever used a document management system in the past, right, you would realize that those systems, when they were doing searches, weren't as good as the Googles of the world, weren't as good as the Yahoos of the world. In Yahoo, when you went to Google and you typed something, you expected the answers to come. But in your enterprise, with far less a set of data, those answers were still not coming, right? Then you had the whole concept of scanned documents, so documents which were not readable by the system, right? So you had almost of the 90%, almost 40 to 50% of the data would reside in scanned documents in your organization, especially in the earlier stages when digitization was taking place. And scaling, document management systems traditionally are RDBMS based, right? RDBMSs are scalable only on vertical scales. They cannot horizontal scales, right? So when you are today in the world of a cloud native environment, right, where most of the organizations have either moved to the cloud or are moving to the cloud, those traditional systems still don't make sense, right? And the compliance risks that all of this carries, managing so much of data for the enterprises carry. So there's a compliance risk to the systems. So the TeamSync's vision is, how do we build a data lake, right? How do we build a storage or a repository to manage the data in the first place, right? Which is secure, which is compliant to the organization's needs, right? Then how do we ensure that all the data is machine readable? So whether it is OCR or ICR, right, is automatically being done, followed by the ability of giving you AI-based searches or semantic searches, as I think the gentleman before me mentioned. And then then having conversation with this data instead of just having a search on the data. Okay, I have a document which I created say 15 days ago. Now I forgot the context of why I wrote that document. Forget about what somebody else in my organization wrote, right? So if I wanted to search this knowledge based repository, whatever the knowledge based repository is, how do I do that in a conversational manner? So that's where DocuTalk is the patent that we are holding, and creating an agentic platform, right? Do we really need to go through the traditional approaches of workflows and processes being defined? Can it not be as simple as a document being uploaded to a folder, right? And that starts all the work from there onwards, right? So that's the approach that we have taken at TeamSync. So OCR and semantic enhancements, I think most of you know better than I, right? It is converting these documents into a machine-readable sense, and then generating the vectors as maybe and storing it in the system. RAG and LLM integrations, I think the gentlemen before me have already discussed a lot about the RAG use cases, right? How do you retrieve the data? How do you augment it? And then how do you generate the relevant context for the person using these data sets? Agentic AI is when it all starts to make sense, right? This entire humongous amount of data coming together really starts making a lot of sense for enterprises today. You think of a simple use case like an ECG report, right? Imagine you have a folder in Google Drive. You upload your ECG report in that drive, and automatically it scans the ECG report, it analyzes it, it extracts all the information, it figures out what is the cause or not the nodal cause of the CCG report, and gives you the report immediately in a human readable text, in a summarized report, right? No doctors required, no talking to anybody else, right? That's the power of what we are trying to build at AngelBot. So yeah, to repeat myself again, you can upload a simple document into a folder, right? It'll do OCR, ICR extractions. It'll figure out whether this document even requires it, uh, create indexes, and then provide the data in an accessible format to the user. Triggering a workflow can happen in for multiple reasons, right? I mentioned the ECG report was one of them. You have another use case of invoice processing or procure to pay, right? I get an invoice from a vendor. I upload the invoice into an invoice folder. Once I've uploaded the invoice, what do I expect? I expect the system to go through this invoice, extract all the information from this invoice, go to my SAP system, check whether this invoice is a genuine invoice or not, right? Do a two-way, three-way matching. Check whether this vendor is eligible for this invoice at this point or not. And then, if all of these checks are correct, then present it to a person in the finance team that this invoice has come in. We have validated that this invoice is good. Can we proceed further? Right? And with one click of a button, that invoice then gets posted to SAP, and thereafter the SAP workflows kick in. Right? So reducing the work of different places in different parts of the organization is again what we are trying to achieve at this point. So the business value we've already added for organizations like the Indian Air Force, uh, the next one would be PAN, your entire country's PAN data. It'll be residing within TeamSync, right? Is saving hours of searching and retrieving this information from within the systems, adding compliances in the system, right? Uh, Ensuring that we are HIPAA compliant, we are compliant with GDPR rules, we are compliant with the DPDP Act that's available in India, uh, and obviously transforming in an agentic manner. So where does Elastic fit into all of this, right? Elastic has been a core technology for us in building up TeamSync, right? When you talk about from a search engine perspective, right? Simple uh, keyword-based search engine perspective. Advance it to semantic searches, right? Taking it up all the way to RAG use cases, right? And now we're also looking at Elastic for the agentic capabilities that Elastic provides in their system, right? So we have integrated our system all in all with the Elastic capabilities. And when you're running a system of this size, right, when you're managing, say, 6 or 10 petabytes of data, uh, these systems require very uh, good observation, ensuring that the systems are up and running. So we're utilizing the Elastic observability stack for that. Uh, when you're managing sensitive data, you need to have you need to ensure that it is secure, the access is secure, the right people are accessing this information, right? The Elastic security comes into play. So we have utilized Elastic in every from every dimension of Elastic that there is, at least today. I think that's it from my side. Any questions, I'll be more than happy to answer.